Everything I know from the 80s is a hand-me-down. My record collection, my books, my dad's old Doc Martens, my photos, even my cameras. Everything is made of an impression, a memory from 30 years ago that I'll never know. I will never breathe the air of 1980 in the Bronx where rap was born.
And the moment one finishes, bang, he flips the mixer. The beat goes on and on. The beat goes on, the wordsmith can go on.
Now what the is the wordsmith?
I'll never smell popcorn in the movie theater while watching The Empire Strikes Back on opening night.
Now, the creators of the biggest smash hit of all time bring you the next episode in the Star Wars saga, The Empire Strikes Back.
But I'll always have this. Saturday, November 23rd, 2019, New Brunswick, New Jersey, 08901. Dear viewer, I accept the fact that I was born in 1997 and therefore it is wrong to claim nostalgia for the 1980s. That is wrong, but I think you're crazy for invalidating my interest in media from 40 years ago. What do you care? You see me as you want to see me. In the simplest terms, with the most convenient definitions. Correct? That's how I saw myself at 7 o'clock this morning. I was brainwashed. This phenomenon is called the 30-year wave, or more commonly, the Nostalgia Pendulum. It's a culture of nostalgia in which everything old is new again. We continuously look back and obsess over the culture of decades gone by. Film, TV, music, fashion. As we enter 2020 and leave our obsession with the 80s behind, we move towards nostalgia for the 1990s and 2000s. I thought it would be nice to give the 80s a last little hurrah before they're relegated to Halloween costume obscurity. Remember when your parents start telling you about their childhood and they get really mushy talking about the old days and they say they wish they could relive their childhood all over again? Well, that's how the 30-year wave works on the large scale. As each generation grows older and becomes the creators of modern media, we see a resurgence of culture from their childhood. Last year, all 3 of my Halloween costumes were 80s references. Some of my favorite film and TV shows are either authentic 80s or made to be homages.
What if this whole time I've been looking for Will? I've been chasing after something else.
That use characters and tropes from movies and TV from over 40 years ago. Why do you think so many movies about the 50s came out in the 80s? Dirty Dancing, Grease, Back to the Future, all of those movies were made in the 80s by directors who grew up in the 50s. The nostalgia for their childhood informs the media that they create and the media that their children consume. Sometimes, I wonder what it is about the nostalgia pendulum that's so compelling to someone who didn't grow up in the 80s. They all feel like aliens or people from a parallel universe, just like us, but a little bit different. Sometimes, I think they look so happy, but other times, it's like looking through a glass, darkly. We remember the happy things, the good things, movies and TV and music that reflected the best of times. And we forget the worst of it all.
A burdensome truth that must be simply spoken. History will record that in the last quarter of the 20th century, a new and deadly virus emerged, and that the one nation on earth with the resources, knowledge, and institutions to respond to the new epidemic failed to do so.
Then I think about what kids in 2040 will think about us, the primitive people of 2020. Or will they only remember the good things? What will seem to them like primitive technology, our weird rectangular phones, our books, and streaming services and YouTube, the so-called golden age of TV? But then sometimes I think, what will be left for them to remember that wasn't just a remake of the last cycle of remembrance? It seems that as we consume ourselves in the culture of remakes, that nothing seems new anymore. What could be new when everything in the future seems so bleak? So we look behind for entertainment. What will the children of 2050 remember about 2020? Climate change? The third impeachment in the history of the United States? Rising student debt and a growing wage gap? Well, I'm sure they'll be able to find something good. But as I'm making this film, the OK Boomer controversy is looming large over social media. It started as a joke, but I think baby boomers, the generation who came of age in the 70s and 80s, feel a sort of territorialism over everything from that decade. Maybe they're just trying to protect a sense of their childhood that's been lost in the new technologies of a new millennia. It must be easy to feel left behind when the world seems to be moving so fast and so far ahead of you. Clinging to the easier, simpler times of childhood makes things slow down.
What is it?
And feel more familiar.
We're deep shit.
It's not hard to feel destabilized in a world that seems to move at 100 miles an hour. I can't blame filmmakers for wanting to relive their childhood through their art. The most important thing brought into 2019 from the 1980s is the aesthetics, an accessory to be worn, a thin layer shrouded over the politics of the 21st century. I would never choose to live in the 1980s, not even the picturesque version in movies and TV, because that's just a fairy tale. The thing about the 30-year wave is that it's a child's impression of the 1980s, an idealized, perfected version of one of the most politically strife moments in American history. We faced the AIDS epidemic, the Reagan administration, the Cold War, but where is any of that in our media, or our TV, or our fashion? No thanks. I think I'm fine right where I am.